We're gonna talk a little bit about how to do businesses in Costa Rica in a legal perspective. We're gonna talk about first, Federico's gonna talk about some tips for corporations and taxes. Then Fernando, we're gonna talk about doing real estate in Costa Rica, how to purchase a property, and all the little things, the little tips that you will need if you own a property here in Costa Rica. And at the end, I will talk a little bit also about immigration. So, we have this presentation. I sent it to Francois, so he can send it to you all. So you're gonna have all this information. We have a little who we are. We are a law firm. We specialize mostly in real estate and doing transactions with foreign investors, right? We have presence in San Jose offices, we have offices in Flamingo, but we also serve the Central Pacific and the South Pacific. We serve Quepos, and we serve Dominical and all those areas too. But we're focusing now in this area, in Coco, so we can help you here too. So all this information is about Guanacaste, about the location of Guanacaste that you will have in the presentation, so I won't waste time on that. And pass the voice to my partner Federico so he can review about the corporation.
Good afternoon, how are you? Good afternoon now, right? We started in the morning, now it's the afternoon. We'll send you the presentation so you can see it. It's a lot to digest, right, in 20, 30 minutes. So feel free to ask later on. You can send us emails. Costa Rica has a lot of laws. I don't know why, but we could have less law. There's a law for everything, and there's a bylaw, and there's a decree of the law, and a bylaw of the bylaw. So it's kind of complicated in regards to law. But the system is very, very easy to understand. It's very much like the U.S. and like Canada in the way we're structured. First question that we're always asking is how do we buy, right? And basically we recommend that you buy to a Costa Rican company. There is no restrictions in this country as to how to own. You can own personally, you can own if you're a foreigner, or you can own to a Costa Rican company. For the same reason that you will probably buy to a company in Canada, you will do it here. First, it's more anonymous. Secondly, you create liability and responsibility. You defend your patrimony versus the one of the company. And third, because you're buying in a foreign country, it makes it easier to handle things. For example, if you buy a lot and you want to build on it, right? You're going to need somebody to file for the permits in Costa Rica and take care of your payments and all of this stuff. That through the company you can do with a special power of attorney very easy. Because we will, let's say you own the company, we will send you a proxy so we can do locally a shareholders assembly, and we will grant special powers of attorney when needed and for who is needed. Those powers are very limited. It's like, giving instructions to a robot in the way that as soon as they accomplish what they are supposed to, the power, extinguishes default. So those are the special powers that we will grant to specific people. Obviously, you as owners will have full powers of attorney that are the ones that will make you buy and sell. And then there's another type of power that is called general power, that is for the day-to-day. So for example, if you have somebody that is managing your property, and you want them to have certain powers of attorney that gives them the power to do day-to-day, like if your water got disconnected or your electricity, or you need to do anything with the municipality, that is the government, the county government, they can do it without having to do special powers all the time. So there are different types of powers, but all of this can be done when you buy it through the company. If you buy it personally, let's say one of the problems that Costa Rica has is that everything has to be done before a notary and in person. Right, so if you buy it in your personal name, if you want to give the power, you have to come here to give it before a notary, or go to the Costa Rican consulate in Canada to do it. So it's more complicated. So to the companies, it's more easy. Everything that you can imagine We have two types of companies that are normally the ones that everybody will use. One is called LLC. Is referred as SA and the other one as SRL. However, both are anonymous companies and both are C corps in treatment, so they are not flow-through entities, which is even better. The only real difference between them, there are some technicalities if you call them shares or quotas. Let's say the SA, you will call them shares, and the LLC, it's quotas, but those are technicalities. The major difference is the structure. So the SA is run by a board of directors, and the LLC is run by managers. At the end of the day, it comes to how many people of your country you want to involve. Because if you have to do a board of directors, you will need to appoint at least 4 or 5 people. By law, you need a president, a secretary, a treasurer, then you need a controller officer, and then you need, let's say, a resident agent. In an LLC that is run by managers, with one single manager, that's enough. So you can have one manager or 2 managers or one manager or one vice manager, but it's less appointments. So for foreigners, the best one is LLC.
One manager can be just the owner.
Exactly. So, and you can be the manager and the owner at the same time. So most of the foreigners end using LLCs because you don't want to, call the entire family to see that you have to appoint people on them, right? If you're actually a Costa Rican, you most likely will use the other one because, you have to put all your sons and daughters and friends and wife and husband on the board. If not, everybody gets mad, right? But, that's the way. As to ownership, yes?
So with the SA, are you the accountable executive? So
Yes.
in Canada, we have accountable executives. Even if you have a corporation, you still have.
Anybody that has full powers on the company will be the accountable officer.
So the SRL should provide better liability protection.
No, it's the same one.
Yes.
There is the same one. The only difference is, like, let's say in the SA, the president by default will be the accountable party. Because by law, the president has to have full powers of attorney. In the LLC, you can have different managers, and one having full powers and the other ones having limited powers, so those ones have less accountability. As to ownership, for example, as well, we don't have any restrictions on ownership. So let's say you can own it directly in your personal names, or if you have some sort of like trust or foreign entity that you wanted to be the owner of your Costa Rican company, you can still do that. So the Costa Rican company can be owned by a Canadian company or a Canadian trust. So there is different ways depending on the type of structure. So for example, some people will have a holding company in Canada or a trust in Canada. You can have that one to own the Costa Rican company. And just, switching to another issue, because of the company, if you want to open a bank account in the future in Costa Rica, it's going to be easier. Because there are certain restrictions when you want to open a bank account in your personal name when you're a foreigner. But by a fiction of law, Costa Rica considers that there are 2 types of Costa Ricans, persons and companies. So when you go and try to, you open a bank account through the company, you are actually using a Costa Rican type of figure to it. So it's easier even to open the bank account. ¿Vas a poner otro ahí?
Aquí para seguir para adelante.
Okay.
Eso yo creo que ya.
Yeah, so like basically, when we form a corporation, you will have articles of incorporation, like in Canada, for example, or in the US. It's basically copy-paste of the articles of the law. The most important things will be like, if you want a name or a no-name one that, thankfully we have now. In the past, it was only names, but the names have to be different to other ones. And as everybody has, in this country, you have as many companies as assets you have. And I will tell you in a bit why, because it's very inexpensive to own a company. So if you have 2 cars, you'll rather have one company per each car, and if you have 3 houses, you will put each property in a different company. Basically because we'll talk about taxes in a second, but the corporate tax for an inactive company, the one that is only holding assets, is relatively low. It's $125 per year. So, sometimes you want to keep the assets and the company separated, or at least have one company for, let's say, real estate, and other ones for what we will call here movable assets, that is like your cars, for example. It's not the best idea to have one company that owns, let's say, a car and a real estate company in the same one because of liability reasons, right? You don't want to have an accident and have a lien on the property because of that accident, because it's easier to have accidents or issues when you're driving a car than with a property, right? So you try to at least separate those ones.
I have a question. Do you recommend having a bank account per property?
Yes. Yes, especially if you're going to do rentals or some type of that, right? Because for the accounting is the proper way to do it, right? Then you can get all those expenses and those income where it has to be for the accountant to do the income taxation, right? And also even separate to, let's say, your personal account. Just for those accounting reasons, right, to help the accountant later on. Another funny thing here is that notary publics, let's say we are all attorneys and notary, so being a notary public in this country is an important thing. I know that in other countries, everybody could be a notary. Here, every notary is first an attorney, but not all attorneys are notaries. So you first become an attorney, and then you have to study more, and then you become a notary. And so most of the transactions in this country are done before a notary. So you have to come before, let's say, one of us, and the buyer and the seller will come and transfer the property. And then we file that with the registry, and it gets recorded. The same will happen with a company. People will have to appear before me and form the corporation. By law, you need at least 2 people to constitute the company. But once created, it can be owned by one single person. But to create it, you need 2. Basically, and most likely, our clients will be foreigners, and they will not be here for even incorporating the company, and we will do it like a shelf company. We'll have 2 people of the firm incorporate it, and then transfer the same day that it gets recorded, all the shares of the stock to the final client. And actually, there's a lot of people that request that, especially because they don't want to even to appear, let's say, as an incorporator. But when you incorporate that company, you will be the managers, or you will be in the board since day one. The only difference will be who incorporates. But so 2 staff of the firm can incorporate the company and appoint already the owner as the manager. Excuse me. Yes.
The question is about signatures and digital signatures and signing remotely. Can you go into detail?
You can do that in private agreements. When it comes to every transaction that involves a notary activity, it has to be signed in front of us. So a purchase and sale of a car, of a house, a will, a marriage, because we can even marry people, we can divorce people, and incorporating the company, all of that has to be done handwritten in a... Yeah. Exactly. That's because basically when we're acting as notary publics, we're acting as agents of the government. And actually, even though everybody wants to have its own attorney or party, by law, the notary is representing both sides. And he has to make sure that the transaction is the correct one for both the buyer and the seller. So it's an interesting concept of the notary public, right? It's basically the government that doesn't have the officers to do all of this, granting us as an attorneys this, fiction of representing the parties.
It's like European law in Canada. They're
exactly.
In Quebec, they go under French law, which is like...
And I think you have even... Like in Spain and Argentina, I don't know in Canada, that you have limited amounts of notaries.
Yes.
which is called like a closed notary system. We don't have that one. Anybody that becomes an attorney and does the studies can become. And I know, let's say, for example, in Argentina, you will have a limited number for this state and for this state, so that's called a closed notary structure. Come on, man. Okay. That's what I was saying, again. So as to payments, when the corporate tax, it's like 125 now because of the currency exchange for an inactive company, and it can get to like 400 at the highest level if you have an active company. Active company will be, so if it's only holding the asset and you're not doing an income producing effect, it's called an inactive company. If, for example, you buy a property through the company and you're doing rentals, that is considered an active company. And that one will pay income tax as well. The inactive ones do not. There is this new law now that is a compliance issue that we have to file once a year through digital signature. That one is through digital signature, which is a mandatory shareholders disclosure. So we have to tell the government. It can be done by the owners of the company if they have digital signature, or through the attorneys with a power of attorney that we tell the government who owns the companies. The only good part of that is that people will say, okay, so the anonymous nature of the companies is lost. However, it is not, because this is a very private system. It has the only place that they found. So we did this to comply with international entities, anti-money laundering laws, but they wanted us to be part of this, like it's called OCDE, which is like the development of organized and developed countries. So we're part of that, and they told us to do this shareholder disclosure, but it's done in the central bank system that is supposed to be the most private and efficient software. And basically, it is only accessible by a criminal court order just for anti-money laundering or, let's say, tax evasion reasons. So it's not for civil purposes. For example, if you have an accident and you want to know who is the owner of the company, just to go directly to that people, that will not be accepted there. As in any other country, we have like the same system of taxes. We have the corporate tax, you have income tax, but that income tax will only be for active companies, not for inactive. And income tax, it's a scale. It depends on how much income you do. It goes from 10% to 30%, but it's on the net. So it's income less expenses, and we are very famous on creating all the expenses that we can, right? So you just need a great accounting, and if you buy an asset here and you're coming all the time here, well, those expenses of your traveling here could be considered deductible expenses for the income tax. Then the value-added tax, that we have now, it was called services tax in the past. It's just the famous 30% that you see in all the invoices that you're seeing when you're going to the restaurant or to the supermarket. We didn't used to have it, and it was called sales tax. And now we have it for everything. Let's say like attorney works or attorney works mostly, and doctors and all of that, we didn't have to pay it. I mean, we didn't charge it. It was only a sales tax, so it was only things related to sales. But now it's for everything. Capital gains tax is a new one. It's like in this, after COVID times that all these countries need money, so we created the capital gains tax. It still is a very soft one in the way that, it has a lot of exemptions. So for example, if it's considered your residential house, it is exempted from capital gains. Capital gains is 15% on the capital gain, or 2.25% on the gross for the first time, because the law is new, right? So it's super funny because the system of how much we value the properties was completely the other way around. In the past, you had it as low as you could, because you didn't want to pay taxes because there was no capital gains. Now that you have capital gains, you want your asset to be as high valued, so you pay in a small amount. So that's why they created the 2.25 for one time only, just to get into the system. For example, if you had a $500,000 house, you would have declared it in the municipality for $100,000, right? Because you wanted to pay less taxes. But now you want to have it in your real $500,000, because then you pay capital gains only on the difference. So when they did the capital gains tax, they knew that people had it very low. So just to do an effect of people not being hurt so much, they say, okay, for one time only, you can do 2.25% on the gross, not on the net. Obviously, that's the 2.25 normally ended being less because of the low value that everybody had in the assets. The bank account, as I was mentioning, there are certain restrictions for foreigners to open bank accounts simply because of the banking authority and their restrictions on it. But all of that is easier to do with a Costa Rican company. Basically, they will ask you for some cash flow projections, which are very easy done by an accountant, and you will file your legal paperwork of your company and some sworn affidavits and forms, and you open a bank account. It's relatively easy.
Excuse me. What's your preferred bank that you would recommend?
It varies so much because, for example, if you were talking on Manuel Antonio area, which is the south, I would be telling you Promerica, because Promerica owns the marina and they have several branches. If what you want to do is a super easy app in your phone, I will say Banco Bac, right? If you want to use a lot of transactions, BCR or Banco Nacional, that are the government-owned ones, are great. But those ones are more complicated sometimes to open. And then it also refers where are you located, right? Because there are certain parts in the south, for example, that only you have BCR. So you use that one or that one. It's a trial and error. It's like I may have like 5 or 6, even in Scotiabank, that you're very much related to it. And then I need a one from BCR, because all the payments that you have to do to government agencies have to be done only through BCR. So, and then you have Banco Bac, because it's the more efficient, app. So it all depends on exactly where you are and for what you have it, up to a point that you may end having 2, 3, or 4, depending on what you want to do, right?
I would recommend to have 2, at least. One in a public bank, which are BCR or BNCR, and one in a private bank.
Yeah.
Banco Nacional and Banco de Costa Rica. Those are the government banks.
What's a private?
Is that linked?
Excuse me?
It's linked?
Wait.
Like Bank Nacional?
Banco Nacional is one,
Okay.
and the other one is Banco de Costa Rica.
Those are the 2 big government-owned banks. What was the last? And then the other thing that could be highly recommended if you open bank accounts is to open one in dollars and one in colones. Because then you can, let's say, play with them. Basically, for example, you'll get debit cards of both. But again, you could say that you use, you can wire here. Because, wiring funds could be in fees a little bit costly. But you can send, a big amount of money, let's say, to the dollars one, and then fund the colones one every time you want to use it, so you protect your funds. So in my case, I will do that. I will pay with the colones one, but I will be funding it every time that I need. I don't want to have a big amount down there so they can take it out, right? So open one in dollars and one in colones is also a good option. Fernando is coming now to talk about real estate.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing?
acá.
Okay.
Adelante. Y acá para atrás.
Okay, thank you. Gracias. Did you get cookies and coffee from me? Yes. If you didn't, raise your hand. If you want more, raise your hand too. So, obviously, I mean, Federico has covered a lot on the legal aspects. He laughs because he knows I'm saying the truth. But you know, to purchase real estate in Costa Rica is really not that different from Canada or United States. What is different is the bureaucracy, right? I mean, our system and our compliance and the government agencies is what makes it a bit different. But in reality, what is the first step? You take a look at the dream property that you want to buy. That's number one, right? Then you get counseled by an attorney. It's got to be a real estate attorney. I mean, you don't want your investment to go into the wrong hands of bad counseling. Obviously, the owners that are the sellers, they already have legal counsel. And they're probably going to push to use their counsel, which is fine, right? But because as Federico was explaining, as notaries, you are acting on behalf of both parties because you are a government, official, outsourced to perform these type of duties. But so you represent both parties. But the truth of the matter is, you better get a lawyer for the seller and a lawyer for the buyer. Okay, especially the buyer, and especially a buyer like you, that first time probably purchasing property in Costa Rica, so you don't know. So you better have your own counsel, and the seller can have their own counsel, so that everything goes smooth, uneventful. You get a letter of intent, so you already chose the property that you want to purchase. You submit a letter of intent yourself or through a realtor, broker, and basically it's very simple letter. Offered price and property description, and your names and so on and so forth. It's one page, very simple document, just to save up the property. So that letter of intent, once gets accepted by the seller, then you hire the attorney and you do the sales and purchase agreement, SPA, which is now a contract, legally binding contract, that is, has all the legal clauses needed to make enforceable this contract. And it can be done in English, it can be DocuSign, it can be hand signatures and PDF back. So it's very simple, right? No big deal. You can be in Canada, United States, Europe, and you can DocuSign, and that's very easy to do nowadays. In it, you will establish the due diligence period. The due diligence is really up to you. And an agreement, you come with the seller. Okay, do I want 15 days, 30, 45, 60 days? It depends on what type of due diligence. Of course, we do that legal due diligence. Check on taxes, corporation, compliance, real estate studies, topography studies, so on and so forth in the registry, company research, share books revision, and all legal books revision, so on and so forth. But you may also want to have topographic due diligence, which is, two kinds. One is to make sure that the property that you're buying is the actual property that is shown to you, and one to check on the size of the property. Make sure that it matches the information that you're given and the registration information with the actual, on the ground information. Also, if you're buying a built home, obviously you want, or we strongly suggest you get an inspector, either an architect or an engineer, somebody like Luis, I think is his name, that came earlier this morning, and do an inspection. Structure, the bases, everything, the ceiling, the roof, that actually structural, so that you can make a decision that will make you feel comfortable. So let's say the 45 days, which is pretty standard, 30, 45 days due diligence periods to purchase a home, expired, and you receive the report by the topographer, favorable, from your attorney and your architect, and it's favorable, then we proceed to, in that meantime, like Federico says, it's better, or it's our recommendation to create a corporation to hold that asset. So, which is done during the due diligence period. So we got a corporation,